Kentucky has nearly 9,000 kids in foster care, and the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services looks for stable homes with loving and capable parents to provide for these children. However, a mandate from President Joe Biden's Department of Health and Human Services now requires that children be placed in homes that align with the child's LGBTQ identity. And this is a major obstacle for many faith-based foster care ministries and child placement agencies. Hi, I'm Richard Nelson, the host of the Commonwealth Matters. And joining us to talk further about this is Dale Suttles of Sunrise Children's Services, and he's going to help us think through this issue. Dale, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Richard. So glad to be with you, and so thankful for the great work that you do here in our Commonwealth.
Well, thank you. I think a good place to start, Dale, is to tell the listeners and viewers a little bit more about Sunrise just off the air. We were chatting about how it is the oldest child placement agency in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. 150 years old, something like that?
Well, yeah. So yeah, Richard, and I appreciate you saying that and talk about the past a little bit. Back in the day, as we always like to say, child welfare often looked to the church to help solve some of these major problems. And so in 1869, Sunrise was started by four wonderful women from Walnut Street Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky, and they started it because, again, that's right after the Civil War. Lots going on the streets, a lot of orphan children, especially teenagers, and they opened up their home to serve these children. Sunrise has had over 150 years of service in serving tough to place children who have been traumatized, and having facilities and programs for them to give them a real shot in life. And so we've expanded and changed over the years. It used to be the old Louisville Baptist Orphanage and Kentucky Baptist Homes for Children, and then today Sunrise Children's Services that partners with the Cabinet of Children and Welfare here in Kentucky, and have partnered with that organization since 1978.
Dale, you're a statewide ministry. You have facilities all across the Commonwealth. Tell us just briefly some of the facilities and services that you do offer.
We do some real specific things, Richard. We've even got a program for boys who have been sexually abused, and because of that, have started that potential acting out process on that. It's a very specific program. It's very sad that these boys oftentimes don't have a home to go back into, but it's all because that they have been violated many, many times in cases. So a ministry that works with us. We have what we call a PRTF, a high psychological unit of help in trauma recovery for boys in Danville. These are children who have failed 2 hospital visits, and they need that next step. We have very dedicated staff to work with that wonderful clientele of ages 6 to 18. We have a program we call CAMP. We call it Cumberland Adventure Program, where we use the outdoors as a means of therapy to help boys work through their issues, things that have happened to them. Also on that campus, we have one of the first drug and alcohol recovery programs for adolescent boys that we had gotten involved in just a couple of years ago. That's highly successful. We have a program for girls down in Elizabethtown called Glendale that works with females that have been highly traumatized. Foster. So many foster homes are needed, especially for teenagers and large sibling groups. So we have a robust foster care program that almost had to close at one time, simply because of our religious beliefs that we stood up for. And from that foster care program, over 700 adoptions. And I've got to emphasize that. A lot of providers do really good work, but they don't provide that adoption process as we do. When kids are adopted, you lose income. But that's not where Sunrise is. As a ministry, we want to see these kids, if they can go back to their families, we are all for that. And we want that unification. But if they can't, we need to set them up in positions where they can find those forever homes, forever homes. So we're very proud of that. Independent living for children 18 years or older that's aged out the process. Putting them in apartments, getting them a good start, tying them to trade schools and junior colleges and colleges so they can get education, so they can have part-time jobs, providing them with mentorship, and then counseling services. Richard, we found out that after COVID, that there's such degree of depression, anxiety that folks need Christ-minded folks to turn to, just simply that can listen to them. And so Sunrise is very diverse in everything it does. And again, we're looking at expansion. So we're very proud of our work, but we're proud that we're biblically grounded, and we have some outstanding leadership in place here at Sunrise.
Dale, you had mentioned off air that you have an expansion program going on right now. You're building a couple new facilities, correct?
So what we're doing in Danville, we have a waiting list of that PRTF program for boys, a waiting list of 154 kids.
How many do you serve altogether?
Well, so obviously, we can't build 154 beds, but we have a building that we are expanding, and we are doing some renovation to that building that we will add 9 more beds on that campus that we can help. Richard, as you know, and at no fault of the state, that they're so overloaded with children and hard to place children, teenagers, and so on, that kids are sleeping in state offices, kids are sleeping in state park rooms, hotel rooms, and basically no room at the end. So we're trying to do what we can to open up more homes. The other project we're very proud of is what we call Solid Rock. It's on donated property, farm property in Winchester. We're building 2 3,500 square foot homes that we will ask a mission-minded couple to move into, give us a 2-year commitment to take some of these tough-to-place kids in really a state-of-the-art home that these kids can move into and feel like, and the couple can feel like they're getting a real shot in the arm. So we're trying to be very creative. We see that as a therapeutic community. 2 homes today, maybe 10 homes down the road, with tiny homes distributed throughout that campus, that farm, so that as kids age out, they can move directly into, and everyone's supporting each other. We have a couple of churches close by that will send volunteers, that will cook meals, that will surround this campus with love. So we feel like it's getting back to the old model of childcare, but with some really nice homes for these kids to move into.
Dale, you are truly a Christ-centered ministry with the mandate from James chapter 1. You referenced Jeremiah 29. You're biblically grounded as to your mission and as to your approach. And I want us to go back to what just happened at the federal level, where Joe Biden's Department of Health and Human Services issued new guidance for child care agencies and for foster parents in particular. There were 3 requirements. There's actually hundreds and hundreds of pages in these updated guidelines, but this is part of it. It says that providers must commit to establishing an environment that supports the child's LGBTQI plus status or identity, and the provider must be trained with the appropriate knowledge and skills to provide the needs of the child related to the child's self-identified sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, and the provider must facilitate the child's access to age or developmentally appropriate resources, services, and activities that support their health and well-being. Dale, just a few minutes ago, you talked about young boys who were sexually abused, and you have a special program and facility that ministers to them. As I read this new mandate from DHSS, it seems to undermine all of that. Let's say you have a boy at this facility that has been sexually traumatized, who says, well, Dale, or to the staff there, well, I'm really a homosexual or I'm transgender. Can you even do ministry to those who've been sexually traumatized and abused when children are allowed to determine their own gender identity and sexual orientation?
I think and it's a lot to unpack, and so I think folks, let's look at it this way. I think we all would agree that any child's emotional welfare, health welfare should be taken care of. I think we would all agree upon that. If a child has a cold and needs that cold taken care of, yes, absolutely. Does a child that is in the LGBTQ community that has been traumatized, that needs help, does that child deserve help? Absolutely. But then you get into the other things that is going on. The United States is behind Europe when it comes to some of this stuff, and so Europe has went down this road. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked here. First of all, in Europe, children who have went through the hormone process, okay, now when we're saying children, we're talking about 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old children, or have went through any kind of surgical process, are now coming back to the providers and the foster parents or the parents of care, and are now suing because they said, you were in charge of me. And now that my brain is fully developed, I am not happy. That's a lot of liability to take on, Richard. And I think we make these decisions and we don't look down the road to see that what potentially could happen. You are opening up a world of hurt in some of this, in some of these decisions. As a faith-centered organization, and we are very tied to the Kentucky Baptist Convention, but we're tied to all kinds of churches across Kentucky that believe that what we are doing for children and orphans is really good work, and we're proud of that work. We have an obligation, and our folks have an obligation to stand on biblical principle. Okay, we can either go the other way or we can stand on biblical principle. For us, it makes life easier. We had a decision 3 years ago through Fulton versus Philadelphia that allowed us, and that's something we were doing at Sunrise anyway, to take same-sex couples and refer them to other organizations who could best work with them and would be a best fit. Why would we turn those folks away? Well, it's because that grounded in those biblical principles, we thought they were best served by an organization that was not strictly faith-based like Sunrise. Sunrise is in a position to open up lots of churches who can bring families to the table. These families can serve many, many children. Less than 2% of the children that we're talking about are in this category of what we're talking about, transgender and some of this stuff. You have a whole 98% of kids who are not in that category that need help too. There's plenty of room at the table. And what we're doing here is throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. We're taking faith-based organizations that are doing good work and making them make a decision. Either we will do foster care the way you want us to do foster care, or we will shut our foster care programs down. We've been told there's an exemption, but we haven't been told what that exemption process looks like. What we've been told by our attorneys is that probably that exemption process looks to be, as the case in Vermont, looks to be that you either take this rule or you don't do foster care. We believe that's wrong. I made the statement it's big bad government at its worst. Okay, we need our faith-based people to work with the children that they can work with.
Kentucky is at a crossroads. We can choose to give in to the radical left, or we can choose to engage the culture in a God-honoring way.
I started the Commonwealth Policy Center because I believe that Christians have a responsibility to influence government and society to the glory of God. While the Commonwealth Policy Center's made a significant impact, our work isn't finished. If you'd like to join our movement working for timeless values, then head to our website.
To learn more, go to commonwealthpolicycenter.org.
If you're just joining us, you're tuned into the Commonwealth Matters. I'm Richard Nelson here with Dale Suttles, president of Sunrise Children's Services, and we're talking about a federal mandate under the Biden administration that would require foster parents and foster care providers to acquiesce, if you will, to a child's gender identity or sexual orientation. And Dale, I wanted to get back to something that is really an interesting development. You had talked about how Europe is ahead of this country when it comes to walking back their position on gender identity of minors. Right now, there are lawsuits in Europe where minors have transitioned from their biological sex to the opposite sex, and they're seeing all kinds of problems, physical problems, psychological, emotional. And several countries there have hit the pause button on transitioning minors. They're seeing the great harm that it has caused, and I think we're seeing that here too. We've not seen the major organizations fully acknowledge that. But I want to go back to a broader level here, that children, really, their brains are undeveloped. They're still growing. There are several things as a matter of public policy that we keep kids from. They don't drive until they're 16. They can't use alcohol or tobacco until they're 21. We protect our children. And my question is, and this is more rhetorical than anything, why should there be a federal policy that allows a minor child, whether 5, 6, 7, 8, or a middle school or even high school age, to determine their own sexuality? That's something, by the way, that we've protected them from. We've said, hey, until you're an adult, you're a child. You're not expected or should be involved with sexual activity, just like we don't want our children involved with drugs or alcohol or smoking. It seems to me that there is a new frontier that we're embarking on, and we're saying, hey, kids, it's the Wild West. Do as you please, identify as you please, engage in sexual activity if you please. I'm saying that because this underlies, I think, the mentality of this DHSS policy that says that kids determine their own gender. Kids are the one that define their own moral code. And something has shifted in the last few years that where 10 years ago, we'd say, no, kids are not in the driver's seat when it comes to this. But now with this policy under the Biden administration, that does seem to be the case. Dale, I want to bring this to what you said just before that quick break, as far as the exemption that's supposed to be there. And as your attorneys have looked into it, and as you understand it right now, if I heard you correctly, that exemption is either you follow the Department of Health and Social Services guidelines, or you just don't do child placement or foster care. Is that your understanding right now?
As of right now, that's the understanding, but I will also tell you there hasn't been a lot of communication with the feds down to state programs, as far as we know. And so there's a lot of ambiguity there. But it's scary for those that are out there doing the work to know that something like this is out there. Again, Richard, no one is saying that a child who has been traumatized doesn't deserve love and to a home and to be cared for. But some of this stuff is really scary. And I just think we haven't thought through the ramifications down the road of what this could look like. And if you want to scare foster parents away, We're at a time where we don't have enough homes. You put this stuff out there, you're going to scare a lot of people from doing good work.
That's right. You mentioned earlier in the program that there are kids that are sleeping on the floors. Actually, in Kentucky, there were kids that were sleeping in state offices. These are not bedrooms. These are not houses. They were actually sleeping on cots or in sleeping bags in state offices because there's a shortage of foster homes. Dale, do we have any idea how many parents are going to be discouraged from participating? Let's say Sunrise can't do the work that you're doing. Any idea of how many kids that this is going to negatively impact?
Well, so we have a lot of pastors involved, right? They're called. They do this. Pastors and their wives, people from churches. What if they were confronted with, you've either got to do this, you've got to be accepted, you've got to accept this ideology, or we're going to take your kids. I mean, that's, think about what would go on there. How many kids' lives would be disrupted? Again, we're talking about parents that have a biblical belief and are grounded biblically. That's their business model, right? So we're talking about two different business models where they're going to choose where they're comfortable, and they're going to choose to follow the path of the Lord. So as they see it, this could be highly disruptive. You could see a system crumble, in my opinion, because you're going to take away many, many families and potential families that just want to help.
Dale, this isn't the first time that government policies that have infringed on the biblical commitments of Sunrise that you've been confronted with. A few years ago, you were taken to court over a hiring decision. There was somebody who was not in accordance with your hiring guidelines, with staff guidelines. And then most recently, Governor Andy Beshear refused to renew the contract with Sunrise, as I understand it, unless you're willing to place children in same-sex parented households. I bring up these two examples for two reasons. One is you're no stranger to government overreach. And then secondly, and more importantly maybe, is you've prevailed in the courts. You have won defending your biblical commitments. Are you as optimistic as you stand against the federal government overreach?
Oh, absolutely. Because what's the federal government? What are they trying to do? They're trying to bypass Fulton versus Philadelphia. Really, that they're trying to maneuver through a regulation that no one knew anything really about until September, and we still didn't know a whole lot about it. So, absolutely. I mean, you're seeing many court decisions out there that is standing behind biblical principle. Freedom I've said this forever, Richard. Freedom on one side is freedom on the other side. We all have the right to believe in this country as we believe, but we all have that right. And so when you're encroaching upon a large faith-based population, well, that's not going to stand. And I feel quite confident, Richard. I believe in this new HHS regulation. I know there's up to 15 to 20 states that are going to fight this thing immediately if they have to, and the AGs from those states are behind them. So, but it's a nuisance, right? It takes everyone's eye off the ball. Why do we have so many kids in the system? Because we've got drugs, we've got alcohol, we've got depression, we've got anxiety. So we have a lot going on in our society. Society is looking for something. It is looking for something. It is lost, and so there's a lot of work to be done. And when we have to put all these efforts into these, and for me, some of these foolish mandates, again, every child deserves a home. Every child deserves to be cared for. No one is saying anything against that. But you are forcing things upon people that they don't believe in. Quite frankly, they're scared of, and it seems science fiction to them. 10 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about these kinds of things. Or if you were talking about it, we'd put you in a white coat and haul you off somewhere. So that's we need to grab a hold and take a look and take a deep breath, and we need to do some investigative and look what's happening in Europe.
Yeah, very good. Dale, you had, and we're just about out of time, but you'd mentioned attorney generals across the country standing against the Biden mandate. This includes Kentucky's Attorney General Russell Coleman, who said that his office is closely reviewing the regulations to determine how to respond. And AG Coleman stands with Sunrise and with religious freedom, and he is pushing back against this Biden mandate. Dale Suttles of Sunrise Children's Services, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all for tuning in to the Commonwealth Matters. If you could, please go to your favorite podcast platform for those of you listening online or on your podcast, and then rate us. And then secondly, tell your friends about the Commonwealth Matters and to tune in. Until next time, may God bless you.